Thank you everyone for joining us for today's What's New in Intacct R1 webinar. Just some notes before I turn it over to Dougie. Everyone is eligible to receive one CPE credit from this webinar. You just need to do two things. So there'll be 4 polling questions that pop up throughout the webinar. You just need to answer 3 out of 4 of them. And then also there will be a survey that pops up when the webinar ends, and you will need to complete that. And then if you do both of those things, you'll be eligible for your CPE credit, and I will send that over to you. And I will also send the slides and recording at the end. So it's all yours, Dougie.
Thank you, Kristen. So welcome to Leap Year, February 29th. So as always, when some new, sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought. Whenever a new release comes out from Intacct, I go through it with a pretty fine-tooth comb to find out what's going to affect our clients, our nonprofits the most. And this is the list that's going to affect it. So there's maybe some obscure things that you may not be aware of, and I'm going to hope to make you aware of this. So you all know me by now. Okay, so the first one is more for administration. It pertains to users. So with release 1, creating a new user will not automatically create a contact record, which is a good news scenario. If you've ever had to set up new user new user accounts for Intacct, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you set up a new user, you will be able to select from a pre-existing list of contact records, and you can link them that way. I'm skipping down to the bottom little bullet point. And we also recommend that before you're setting up a new user that is also an employee, right? Make sure that you set up the employee record or the appropriate customer record or vendor record first before setting up a user ID. So the vendors, employee dimensions, customer records all create contact records. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, and at the risk of dating myself, think of the old-fashioned Rolodex with the little white cards. That's what the contact record is, and that's what it'll create. So all those various areas that I just listed should be linked together via one contact record, and that's now by setting up a new user, it won't create a duplicate one. The third bullet point with the individual users can now also update their email addresses on the My Preferences page. That's a good thing. So with that, I want to show you in Intacct what I mean. And so if I go to Intacct, here we go. My Preferences is where your name is at the top right-hand corner. So previously, you could not update your email address and have it affect your user ID. Your user ID has an email address on it. So for example, when anybody resets your password, it knows exactly what email address to use for the temporary password email notification. So if I click on My Preferences, I'm going to show you how that's affected. I'm going to go to My Preferences. I'm going to change my email address to the I have the JMT one. I'm going to change it to one of my Gmail addresses. I just wanted to show you how changing your email, so an employee user, a business user, whatever, they can now change their own email addresses where they wish to have their password reset notifications sent to. I'm going to now take you to company admin users, and usually only administrators of Intacct will have access to this. Here's my record. I want to show you how that updated this email address. See, it updated the email address. So don't make note of that email address. If you email me to that email address, I will not answer you. So just know, I just wanted to show you how that works. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. All right, so that is with the contact records. It's not, normally there's not a lot that admins have updates for. This is one that admins have updates for. The next one is also what Intacct calls a self-service account recovery. Have you ever tried logging into Intacct so much you get locked out and you get the message that you're locked out, and then you have to either notify your admin or us to unlock you so you can log in again? Say that fast 3 times. Now you don't have to. It'll save a little bit time. You know that where it says forgot my password? All you have to do, even if you're locked out, is click on the forgot your password, and Intacct is going to walk you through how to reset your password. They'll send you they'll send you an email notification with a temporary email, and that will allow you to unlock your user by resetting the email address. Okay, so that's the self-service account recovery. The next one deals with accounts payable and AP automation. I know we've been talking about AP automation for a while now. And AP automation is, with every release, it's becoming stronger and more secure, and they're adding more functionality. So in a nutshell, for those of you who may not have heard of the Intacct AP automation, this allows you, if you turn that on, well, if you wish to turn it on, contact us and we'll make sure it gets turned on. It's not a regular module turn on. We do have to ask Intacct to provision it. There is no extra module charge for AP automation. There is a charge, but it's not for the module, it's per transaction. I don't know what the charge is now. Back in October, it was still 50 cents. I know it's gone up. I just don't know what the per transaction charge is now. But what happens is you are given an email address from Intacct that you send to your vendors. The vendors will then use that email address to email their invoices or their AP bills to you. When those AP bills are received by Intacct in that email address bucket, you can either set it up so it automatically uploads as a draft bill, or you can manually upload it as a draft bill. And when it does, it uses the artificial intelligence, the AI technology, to recognize what codes it should be used. And up until this point, it's been primarily the location code and the department code that it remembers, right? And some of the other codes. And the more you use it, obviously, the more it remembers in its memory bank on the codes for that vendor. With this release, we all use more than just location and department codes, right? We use a whole bunch of dimensions. We may use the project code, and I'm using Intacct terminology. You may have relabeled it to grant code or the class code, which may be relabeled to restriction. You may have some user-defined dimensions. With this release, there is an early adopter program now. This is an early adopter program that will allow you to start expanding the proverbial horizon, so to speak. And with this release, AP automation will start detecting patterns in how you select dimension values, for individual line items. And so what that will do as you build the memory bank is it will, the more you use it, the more it'll remember the patterns. And in the future, once it recognizes, oh, it's this vendor and it's this kind of bill, then it'll start making suggestions for coding. So if you would like to be part of this early adopter program, please let us know right away, because the early adopter programs do fill up rather quickly. And we'll see what we can do to get you part of this AP automation early adopter program for testing out and starting using with the more robust dimension coding memorization or using with AI. All right, so that's what that is. I can't show you that in Intacct because we don't have AP automation turned on in any demo environments. But especially if you're already using AP automation, it might be good to be part of this early adopter program. All right. So that is one. There's some more AP automation or AI automation as part of this release. In just a little bit, I'll show you that. But speaking of accounts payable, there is now a simplified list of contacts available in your when you're in the bill and you have a vendor selected, you have the pay bill and return to fields, that auto populate, but sometimes you want to switch it to another contact that's on the vendor record. And I don't know if you've ever noticed or not, because it is used, but it's not widely used. So that's why I wanted to call it out. That what if you want to use a different contact that's on your vendor record, but you don't want to weed through all of your contacts. Well, there is now a new configuration setting in accounts payable configuration that will allow you to do those selections. And if you go to, and I'm going to show you this within Intacct, if you go to accounts payable and then configuration, you can go, one of the new settings is labeled contact settings, and that allows you to restrict contacts in an AP bill transaction to either show all contacts, which is the current behavior. You can restrict it to vendor contacts, or you can restrict it to contacts related to the selected vendor. So the difference between all three of those is show all contacts will give you everything, any contact record, whether it's part of a customer or vendor or employee or whatever. It'll give you, you have to weed through all of them. If you restrict it to vendor contacts, then it'll only show you the contact records associated with any vendor record. But the third one is if you restrict the contacts related to the selected vendor, you're only going to see the contacts that are on that vendor record. So this one definitely want to show you because it can come in handy a lot. So let me go to back in Intacct. I'm going to go to accounts payable. First, I want to show you the vendor records so you can see what I'm talking about. So for example, I put Austin ISD and Bugs Bunny. I always like to use weird names because they stand out more, right? So I want to show you the contact records in each setting, how the cause and effect is. Okay, so I'm referring to this contact list tab, which you may or may not use a lot. On this contact record, if you'll notice, I've added some contacts down here. The category field is where you just identified, like you could say summer address, winter address, or specific payable to, or whatever the case may be. If I say, let's go, I'm like, okay, I don't want to use this one. I want to use, let's say, do I have Bunny in here? No. There is my Bugs Bunny. Here's my Bugs Bunny. And let's say I want to add a new contact. I'm going to add, who should we name? Let's use the Roadrunner because that way you'll remember it. It's something weird. Roadrunner. Yep. And I like the contact name to be first name first and then last name. And the print as, that's the payable to Roadrunner. I'm just going to save it like that. Okay. So we are now set, and that's going to be I'm going to say payment. I can't spell payment. Okay, and then now that I have the payment here, when I click on the pay to contact, I'm going to switch it to payment Roadrunner. And you're just using the category field value as a way to identify the address up here in the appropriate fields. With 1099s just having been finished, if you have a vendor that has a different 1099 address, you would do the same thing here. Like I could say this is the 1099 contact person. And then up here, I just select 1099 here. And that way the 1099s will use this address and not the vendor address. That's just side note, right? So we have Ben Affleck, Bugs Bunny, and Roadrunner. So I'm going to click submit because I have vendor approval turned on. Let me make sure I don't have to approve that. Nope. Okay, good. Good deal. So now I'm going to bills. Oh, sorry. Let me show you the configuration first. I'm going to go to accounts payable setup configuration. And again, if you don't have security rights to that, you need to make sure of the functionality and go to the person who does have those security rights so they can do the appropriate setting changes. I'm going to scroll down to contact settings. So first we're going to do show all contacts, right? That's current behavior. So I'm going to go to accounts payable, bills. And if I add a bill, and I'm going to use the vendor Austin ISD, notice how it pulled in Roadrunner? Well, that's my payable to contact records. And if I click on the drop-down list, it has every single contact in here in the system. Okay. So why is this not showing up? Huh, somebody else must be the approver. Okay, now I'm going to go to the configuration settings and change it again to restrict to vendor contacts. And so it's only going to show me the vendors, the contacts associated with any vendor records. And I'm on purpose not doing the duplicate screen so I don't have to refresh. This is kind of the proverbial refresh. So I'm going to add a bill again. I'm not actually going to add it. I'm just going to select the vendor so you can see the difference. Well, you can't really see it. The list actually is shorter. It does narrow it down to just contact records for vendors. But now this is the one that's going to be really cool. I'm going to go to setup, configuration, and change it to restrict to contacts related to the selected vendor and save it. And now you're only going to see those contacts associated with that specific vendor. I'm going to click plus, shortcut data entry, and Austin ISD. Now look here. It's only showing me the contacts associated with that specific vendor. So if I want to change it to payable to Bugs Bunny, it'll go through and pay to Bugs Bunny. Okay. I have vendor approvals turned on, and anytime I make a change, it has to be approved. I'm now in as a user and not as an admin. So that's why I can't approve. So I'm not going to finish this. So you'll have to take my word for it. And I highly encourage you to check it out in your own system. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of here. And that functionality is now part of Intacct. This is not just restricted to accounts payable, it's also available in accounts receivable. Same scenario, same configuration setting. It's just on accounts receivable module setup and then go to the configuration on accounts receivable. Okay, so that is that. And I have a rogue mouse that is not behaving. Hang on. Oh man, why are my mice so hard to maneuver? There we go. Got it. Okay. Next, switching hats a little bit. Automatic bank feeds. A lot of you have automatic bank feeds turned on. Previously, well, up to now, up to the last release, transactions generated by creation rules. And I hope you all have started experimenting with some creation rules. Were dated based on the company time zone. And bank fee transactions were dated based on the user time zone. Oh, it could sometimes also the company time zone if you were in the same one. The problem with that was it could cause inconsistent matches for reconciliation, especially for all of you all where, like in these days, a lot of us are working remotely and we may be working in totally different time zones. I know that's definitely the case at JMT. A lot of us are working in all different kinds of time zones. What you now have the ability to do with this release is you can set the time zone on the bank, and that then will determine the timestamps. I see I stuttered in my document. Sorry, I didn't catch that. For both created transactions and bank feed transactions. And this will greatly increase your matches and speed up reconciliation. Now, if it's during the month, right, it's not that big of a deal, but it really comes into the play at the end of the month and at the beginning of the next month if you don't have the right time zone set up. So where can you see that in the on the banking record? So the way it works is you have to go to cash management to set up to the checking account, right? You select the appropriate checking account, and on the very first tab, you have to find the banking cloud time zone field and add the corrected time zone. I'll show you what I'm talking about. And while I'm there, I'm going to briefly talk about your creation rules. So back in Intacct, you go to accounts payable, cash management, and you can do it here under all setup, all checking, or setup accounts and checking. Both of them will take you to the same spot. If I go to, and keep in mind, I don't have banking feeds, but I wanted to show you on the screen where you can find it, because I've seen it in other databases as well that already have automatic bank feeds turned on. If you're on the very first screen, the detail screen, and you scroll down, oh, this one does have it. Yay, it didn't before, sorry. It's underneath the applied rule set, and here's the banking cloud time zone. So here's that whole time zone, all of the time zones. So if I wanted this to come through, excuse me, at Central Daylight Savings Time, I would just set it up for Central Daylight Savings Time. Okay, I guess I picked the wrong bank before. So that's where it is, at the bottom right-hand corner of the checking account information if you have automatic bank feeds turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. A little side note to bank feeds. If you have banking feeds set up, I want to make sure you guys are aware of not only the matching rules, but also the creation rules. Please let me know if you're not aware of the creation rules. You have the ability to create a transactions. Like, for example, if you have a lot of ACH deposits coming in where they're depositing directly into your checking account, like grant funds or contributions or things like that, then you need to make sure you have some creation rules turned on, because that will allow Intacct, as it pushes in the transaction for that specific deposit, you can create a rule and say, if the description contains, whatever the wording is, then let's pretend it's Medicare, I don't know, then create this specific journal entry, and you have the option to tell the system, do you want to create the journal entry in a posted status or in a draft status, and what the journal entry type is, and all that other fun stuff. And you can then save a lot of time with not having to try to remember to create journal entries for a lot of these transactions. Okay, you can create journal entries and credit card transaction with creation rules on automatic bank feeds. And you can also set up matching rules, not only on the checking account number and the dollar amounts, but you can also set up matching rules based on the wording that descriptions may contain, or any other kind of keyword indicator on the banking feed if it matches with something similar in Intacct. So that is automatic bank feeds and the bank transaction dating. And if you're not sure how to do it, please reach out to us and we will assist. Okay, so let's go back to our PowerPoint. All right. Next, import templates. We're kind of jumping all over the place here. And you're like, okay, what's the big deal about import templates? If you're importing, you know that all the templates can be found under company, the setup tab, and import data, right? All the templates can be found there and they can still continue to be found there. Well, with this release, Intacct has also made available to you these specific import templates on the general ledger import button. So journal entries, all types of journal entries. You no longer have to go to the company set up import data to get the template for journal entry transactions, whether it's user defined journals or statistical journals or adjustments or regular journal entries. You can go right to the import button within the journal entry screen and download the template from there. Same with account groups. Like, how many of you are creating financial reports and you weren't aware that you could import account groupings? Because sometimes it's a lot easier to set up account groupings on a spreadsheet and then import than to do it manually. And for those of you that do dynamic allocations, you can also now import account allocation definitions. Well, you could always do that, but you can get the template from the general ledger drop-down menu as well as the budget template. So let me show you that in Intacct. So if I go to find the mouse, there we go, to the general ledger and all. If I go to journal entries and I click on import transactions, here is your template. If all you have to do is click on download template and you have your import template. That's the same import template that you could have gotten from the company setup import data screen. If I close this out and I go to account groups right here, and go to import, notice there's two different kinds of import templates. One is for account groups and one is for the group members. If I go to account groups, here's my download template. Let's go to import group members. And here's the download template for the group members. Okay, so that's for account groups and account group members. And you're like, well, why does it have to be different? Well, one sets up the account groups and one sets up all the detail that goes with the account groups, whether it's a group of account groups or something else. So that's the account groups. If you have dynamic allocations, the account allocation definitions on the setup tab of General Ledger also now have on the import button the template right here. And let me click on done. Oops, sorry. The account allocation groups also have the template available on the import button right here. It's a little thing, but it makes a difference. Okay. Accounts payable. If you go to accounts payable bills, also has the template available. I didn't know if you were aware of that or not, but the template is also here. So they've already been available in certain screens. I'm just picking on some of the ones that were most frequently used. So that is import templates. So you no longer have to go to company, set up import data. You can go to those specific screens that I mentioned. And if you're on a screen and clicking the import template, sorry, the import button, and you don't see the template, just know you can get it under company, setup, import data. Okay, enough on that subject. Let's get to some exciting stuff. Here we go. That's the import template. Let's talk back to some really new functionality. This is another opportunity for early adopter programs. A lot of us use purchasing, and one of the reasons a lot of us haven't really jumped on the AP automation bandwagon is the AP automation was not available with purchasing up until this point. With this release, Intacct introduced an early adopter program for those of you who wish to try out AP automation with purchasing. It kind of works the same way as the regular accounts payable. You do have to sign up for AP automation with accounts payable to use this. That email address that Intacct sends you, to upload vendor invoices and things like that, it's that same email address you would use for purchasing. And I outlined the steps there. I personally cannot see it yet because we don't have a demo environment with AP automation, but I've seen enough of it, and Intacct has provided some really good documentation on how it works. But what happens is when you turn on this, let's say you're part of this early adopter program, you would have to set up how incoming purchasing documents map to your existing purchasing documents, to the existing, what Intacct calls the source transactions. And so you would email the vendor invoice, because let's say a vendor invoice comes into accounts payable via that email address, you're going to forward it to the invoice in the purchasing transaction screen. Look at the help documentation for the videos, and the system will match the invoice to a purchasing transaction. So, and the system's going to create a draft invoice. You're going to make sure with the invoice attached, right? It attaches all those invoices, and you review, and then you can post. You can also, here's the really cool note, is when you review the drafts and you're like, oh, I linked that to a wrong document, or it was linked to a wrong document, you can change it. You can fix it. And so you have the ability to do that. If you wish to be part of this early adopter program, let us know. We will do our best to get you part of that early adopter program. Okay. This is brand new. It's the first time they've introduced the AI functionality with purchasing and AP. So, and I'm sure there's more to come, and I'm very happy to see this. The workflow is here. So basically you're emailing here, it matches all the coding and stuff like that. There's all the feedback that it draft. Here's all the feedback, and then it's done. So I can't wait to see this in action with some of you. So please check it out, and let us know if we can be of assistance. But this is exciting news that they're now focusing on purchasing and the AP automation and the AI functionality. Oh, here's the rest of it. Hang on, it didn't change. Sorry. There we go. So I want us to revisit the list enhancements. So we've been every release. So I've been mentioning the list enhancements, how they search, right? And there is some very cool added functionality that they've added. And I've had the chance to test it out, not only in my own webinar database, but also in my client trainings the past 2 weeks. And there's some really nice functionality coming up. So again, here's just a summary of all the various screens that it's already part of. They've added the customer screen finally. Vendors has always been there, and some of the others. So these are the screens you can definitely find it on. So what is some additional functionality now that you can use with this list enhancements? So you can add, move, or resize columns. You can freeze columns. You can sort columns in ascending or descending order, which you could always do. And you can also save it for future use. And so let me show you how that works. And I'm going to use the vendor screen to illustrate this functionality. So if you go to accounts payable, and I'm going to go to vendors. So first of all, I have to find my mouse. Uh, you gotta love having multiple screens. So the vendors, notice, come on, where it says turn on lists beta interface next to the add button, turn it on. And it's thinking and it's thinking and it's thinking. Wow, it shouldn't take that long. It's because I'm doing a webinar, so it always things go wrong. Um, if you've never seen this or have never played it, this is the new look and feel of all the list views, list enhancements. Intacct is definitely moving in this direction, so I highly encourage you to turn it on, play with it, get used to it, get used to all the functionality. If you don't like it, just turn it off and it'll go back to the other way. So just as a refresher for some of you, the searching, notice now it says contains. So if you've been through my training, you know that I always mention the percent sign. The percent sign is the wildcard one. You no longer have to do the percent sign. So if I want to find all the vendors that speak, can't type, consulting, let's say, I don't have to put the percent sign in front. I just type it in, right? So I can do that. I can freeze columns. So let's say I want the vendor IDs and the vendor name always to be here. If I click on this little cog wheel, I can freeze this column. So when I scroll, come back here. I don't have a lot. Hang on, let me show you a different way. Let's create a view where there's a lot of fields, because this one doesn't have a lot of fields. So let me go up here. I can, when I click on the cog wheel at the top right, I'm going to click on configure column. And now I can pick the column fields that I wish to add. So let's say I want the 1099 stuff. So if I do 1099, obviously I can't spell. Here we go. I want, or tax ID. Come back here. I want the tax ID. I'm going to take that field and apply. And I want, I shouldn't have applied yet. I'm just going to go, is there an attachment? That's all the contact information. There's a pay to. Let me go back to the top. I want to see, is there an ACH information in there, routing number? Is there a lot of information here? It's all the various contacts. Here's the primary email address. What else do we have on the vendor record? The default expense account. Okay, I want the title. Is there, what's the merge payment request? I don't know. Is there an override? See, all these fields pertain to the vendor records. So I'm going to use the vendor ID, vendor billing type. So you have a lot of choices, right? So if I click on apply now, I'm going to click apply. One more time. Notice how it added the tax ID, the merge payments, the account number, the routing number. There's a lot of fields here now, right? Well, so if I freeze this pane, I'm going to click on the cogwheel for the vendor name. I'm going to freeze it and see how it's smooshed. I can make it wider. So I can resize the fields as well. If I'm like, you know what, I want the vendor name first and then the vendor ID, I can just drag it over. There it is. So it's just drag and drop, right? And now if I want to see information about this, I can scroll over with, and these panes are frozen. So you have that, okay, I have a field. The other thing I want you to, the reason I want you to play with this is I want you to send them feedback. If there is functionality that you're expecting to see that you're not seeing, send Intacct feedback. And now is the time to do it because they're still paying attention to it. And I can also save this view for future changes. I can filter on the view, just like I can filter on this column and pull everything in. Look at all the choices I have per column. I'm just going to clear this one. You can do several of them and you can save the filters. This little icon here, the split screen or the list view, if I click on split screen, then I can see the vendor name information on the left-hand side and all the vendor detail for the highlighted vendor. So if I go to Turner Consulting, for example, notice how the data changes. It's now based on Turner Consulting. If I go back to Bugs Bunny, I can do that. And if I want to see my list view again, all I have to do is click on the list view and I see my list view again. Okay, so that's some of the new functionality. That's some of it was a repeat. They're just adding things to it. So please, please start becoming more familiar with these list views because that is definitely the direction that Intacct is going. And this functionality is also available on customers, speaking of something with a lot of data, and the codes, departments, locations. But we tend to only look at data where there's customers and vendors a lot more than codes. All right, back to the PowerPoint. Let's go back to a new enhancement from financial reporting. Financial reporting now has versioning. I don't know if you all seen that yet, but basically what happens as of 2 weeks ago when this upgrade happened, this release happened, from that point on, Intacct tracked versioning on your report. And so basically, each time you save a financial report, not general ledger, not dimension balances, not any of the module reports, we're talking financial report, it'll save a version of that report. And the versioning will save up to 100 different versions. And let's say, because some of the reports, every time a person hits save, especially when you're building, it's going to save a copy. So if I'm building a report, I may be saving a lot just in the process of building the report. So all that to say is, if a report has over 100 different versions, then only the newest 100 versions appear in the report's history. So if it's older than that, the real old ones drop off. And you're like, well, why would that matter? Well, let me show you on the PowerPoint first, and then I'll show you within Intacct. Come here. There we go. So when you edit a report, you're going to click on more actions. We're talking financial report now. You're going to click on more actions, and the more actions button will now have a selection labeled View Version History. And the version history page displays it displays it the most current or the newest version at the top. And it will look like this grid. You'll see that in a minute. And then what you want to do, like if you want to, you can see who created it. So this is really good if you have a report that's where there may be several people have access to the report and you're like, who made this change? I didn't make this change. Well, you now have the ability to see who made the change and the date and the timestamp. So that's all there. If you go, hang on a second. Once you click on view on one of those versions, that little view here at the grid at the bottom, I'm going to go back to this screen. Then if you want to see, okay, wait a minute, what did it look like 2 versions ago or 1 version ago? You can click on view, then you can click on the preview option. So the preview, restore, and cancel, those options will be available when you click on view. to see what that version looked like. It looks like, I mean, it's going to show you the regular report in edit mode. It looks like that's going to let you make changes. However, if you try to make changes, it's going to totally ignore those changes, right? You have to click restore first, and then you can restore it back to the original. Or if you make changes, I don't know, it depends on what you were trying to do and what you're trying to get back. If you click restore, then whatever current version you're using to preview, then that version also becomes a historical version, right? So it'll keep track of anytime you make a change, even if you just restore, it'll keep track of that version. So you're not losing anything. So let me show you how that works. If I go to reports, financial reports, and you can get to it from the report center as well. I picked this one. I'm going to click edit. And let's say we're going to make a change. We want to do a detailed version of the report. So I'm going to pretend we're going to go change it from summary to detail here. Okay, oh, this didn't change. I'm going to click details and details and details. Okay, and then I want to save this change. Click save. Do you see this message? Changes saved to a new version of this report. To view this report's history, open the More Actions menu and select the View Version History. So I'm going to click OK. So as you're going through, if you're making changes, every time you click Save, it'll save a version of that report the way it was. So if I go to More Actions, I'm going to click on View Version History. And here is my history. See, I tested it just a little while ago. Got to make sure it works, right? So if I click View, I want you to see the oldest version. If I click View, here's my oldest version. Notice it's all summary. If I want to, I can restore it. If I click on Preview, I can preview the live report. If I click Restore, it'll restore that and override what the current one was. So, and at this point, I can save it. Well, you may want to save it as a duplicate or whatever. What if you want a summary and a detailed version, right? You're still going to end up having to make a duplicate, but it will keep it. Now watch here. Now we have another version, because the one I was on where I changed it from summary to detail, that now also became, and then where I restored back the summary, that became a version as well. So just be aware that every time you make a change to a financial report and save it, it will keep a version for you in the history of that financial report. It really is a really cool little feature. Okay. And having said that, I am going to conclude this webinar, and I'd like to open it up for questions. Are there any questions? I'm going to stop sharing. Is everybody still awake? No questions? Sam, you have a question? You can either type it in or unmute. There you go.
So would you have a specific email address that we could email suggestions to?
Yes, you can email support@jmtconsulting.com for suggestions, and we will pass them on to Intacct, because Intacct is the one that tracks all the enhancement requests.
Right. All right, great. Last time I used Intacct was many years ago. But everyone's spoiled, so to speak, between Amazon and QuickBooks
Right.
for ease of use,
Yep.
So yeah, I'll send a list, but thanks for that information.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you all very much for attending. Oh, wait, there is another question. The new functionality with AP and purchasing automation, that is available right now if you wish to be part of the early adopter program. So the way that works is email your client account manager. If you're not sure who that is, email support@jmtconsulting.com. They'll contact your client account manager. We will contact Intacct to see if we can get you added to the early adopter program. And if so, then we'll pass, back and forth all the necessary details. So if you wish to be part of if you wish to be part of the early adopter program, just email us. The best place to email is support@jmtconsulting.com. And then the great support staff will pass it on to your client account manager. Okay. Cool. Great. I know I want to see that in action too. All right. Are there any other questions? You are welcome. All right. Thank you all very much for attending. And you know how to reach us. And we'll see you soon. Oh, don't forget to register for Innovate. It's coming up short. It's gonna be fun. Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.